Hey, what's up, YouTube? This is Parker Denny. I'm excited to be doing the video that I'm doing today. It's interesting because I've had this YouTube channel for a few weeks, and this is the first, basically, I entered into this group of people that we're all kind of supporting each other and creating our YouTube channels. And last year, I actually cut like 15 YouTube videos about various topics. Most of the stuff was political, most of the stuff was before the election, and so this is the first video actually that I've cut fresh this year. So all of the content you see me produce beforehand up to this point has been stuff that was produced like last November, and this is the first one I'm doing this year. So I'm excited because it took me a long time. Like, starting a YouTube channel is not the most straightforward thing. It's kind of scary just being out on the world with all your opinions about whatever it is you think. And so, um, but this topic actually kind of came to me. I'm not going to say it came to me by accident because I don't believe in accidents. However, I had been thinking about, like, okay, what is the first video I'm going to do fresh this year? And so um, this topic came up, and what I'm going to talk to you today um, is about uh, what they call black people or African Americans or what have you. I was actually watching a video from another YouTuber several weeks ago where he was talking about this topic came up early on in the video, and he said that most black people wanted to be called black. And I was like, well, that's interesting because I don't even know that that's true. However, the point that he made around it was sound. However, there's a much deeper conversation behind uh, that question, like what's a call, whether it's black, African American, people of color, so on and so forth. So then after that, that was like 2 weeks ago. After that, last week, I had three people in the same week ask me that very directly. Three of my white friends. They asked, "Well, what's the right thing to say?" And I was like, "Okay." So I guess this is clearly something to talk about on YouTube because I have a clear opinion about it, and it's uh, it's kind of in between all of the different opinions. The first thing that I want to say is that I commend people that ask the question for asking the question and at least wanting to know, like, how to be respectful. And the first thing I would say about that even is that about the answer to the question, the first part of the answer is I would approach the conversation with any black person as far as how do I address you, with a level of curiosity, love, openness, and respect. Because not everybody agrees on the answer to the question. And the only reason why, when I was listening to the YouTube video from the other YouTuber, why I pause is because I'm very clear that people do not agree on the answer to this question. There actually isn't one answer to the question. And this video is going to be, at least from my perspective, about why there isn't just one answer to the question and why there's some energy amongst black people about the answer to this question. And so, for purposes of this video, just so that everybody's kind of clear on what I'm talking about, if I say black American, because thus far I've been saying black people, so I'm going to make an effort to say black American. If I say that, what I'm talking about is black people who are American citizens out of a who have a who descend from slavery. I'm not talking about Africans who have immigrated here who do not necessarily descend from slavery. I'm not necessarily even talking about people from the islands like Haiti, even though they descend from slavery as well. Like, I'm not necessarily talking about them. I'm talking about specifically black Americans who have a history in their families of slavery. And that's a very important distinction because um, I listened to this video years ago, and I'll put a link to it in the description. It was made back in the 90s. It was an African historian named Henrik Clarke where he talks about this, and it was an important part of his whole presentation. And basically what he does is he takes an hour and a half, and he takes African history from uh, about 400 years ago to present. And I think it was way more than 400 years ago, but watch the video. It's an excellent video. And at about the 17-minute and 45-second mark, he goes into this whole conversation about how to address people. And what was interesting is, of the three people that asked me about this, one of the things I was able to say to them is that, you know, I know a lot of white people, and I can name several of my white friends who are very deeply uh, attached to their culture. And I'm even in a personal development group where we say, like, there's a part where we're like, talk like an Italian grandmother. And that means something, right? Like, you can say Italian and you can say grandmother, and everybody has a notion of what that means. I've got a buddy who is of German ancestry, and he has, like, he's very much about that. He's got his German crest on his car, and he's got his family crest like on his phone, and he does all this stuff. And it's like, because he's very clear that he's German. I have, in addition to African ancestry, I have Scottish and Irish ancestry. I know that, right? However, the point that John Henrik Clarke makes in this video that is kind of mind-boggling, and actually I think governs a lot of this conversation about what to address people as, is the notion of, and I'll kind of read what I wrote as the quote, but I advise everybody to watch the video because it's an excellent video. And some people have energy about the video. I don't think it's a highly charged video. It's just saying some things. It's talking about history, at least from his studies and his point of view. But what he says is that when you address people by their right name, that name must relate to land, history, and culture. All people go back to the geography of their original origin and identify themselves no matter where they live on the face of the earth. And the catch with Black Americans is that that's a history that we don't necessarily have. Like, to say Africa, Africa is a big ass continent. It's a continent that's actually made up of 48 countries in 6 island nations. So there's like 54 countries in Africa. So saying African doesn't identify where that person actually, where their history actually lies. Like, you can't go up to a Nigerian and say African, because yeah, he's an African, but he's a Nigerian, or they're Ghanaian, or they're from Congo, or they're from South Africa, or wherever they're from. And that's what actually ends up mattering. So that's part of why when we say African American in this country, it's like, well, okay, like, what does that even mean? Because it's a statement that's born out of that history, right, of slavery. It just is. Because I can't say where I'm from because I don't know. And many Black Americans don't necessarily know where their family of origin is. And so when we make these statements like Black or African American, and I said people of color earlier, and let me just be clear, the reason why I'm not really talking about that is because people of color basically just means not white. So I would let that term go if you're talking to a Black person. There's some Black people that won't care. Like, I've been in discussions, I've been in the corporate world and universities talking about race for many, many years. So people of color is a term that's used in those environments all the time, but effectively it just means not white. That's it. Like, there's no further distinction in people of color other than that. And so if you're actually talking to a Black American, I wouldn't necessarily say that that's the okay term to use, because it doesn't mean much. It doesn't say much. It's very, very diluted. And I would honestly just leave the people of color to, like, the corporate diversity conference or the corporate PC world. It's a relevant term. I don't think it's offensive, but it just is very diluted. And when you get back into the term about Black, African American, when you're talking to a Black American, I would say, if you really want to know what they want to be called, ask them. Be ready for whatever answer that they give, and approach the conversation with curiosity, love, openness, and respect. In my eyes, that's what's the most important thing, is to know that that respect is there and is being given. There's some people that don't want to talk about it. There's some people that don't want to educate anybody about anything. There are other people that have a very clear opinion about what they want to be called. And it really, really, really depends on who you're talking to. In this particular thing in YouTube that kind of sparked this whole conversation inside of me about, I was just like, because the gentleman said black. He said, well, it's the least offensive thing. And it's like, well, hold on. Because what offends somebody is a very individual thing. And I know people that would be offended by the term black. And there's a reason why. And in the video, I'm talking about two separate YouTube videos. One, the one where this guy's talking about various black issues, and the other one is the John Henrik Clarke historical one. And so one of the reasons why the term black is a little complicated is because it says everything about you, about how you look. It doesn't say anything about who you are. And in the video, he follows that statement saying, well, you can call an Italian white, but it doesn't say anything about him. But Italians know that they're Italian. Irish people know that they're Irish. Look at St. Patty's Day, right? Like, it might be a fun exercise of people having an excuse to drink, but Irish people and St. Patty's Day know that they're Irish. They know it, and they're very clear. And incidentally, the guy that was having this conversation, where he was talking about black issues, is Nigerian. So I'm sitting back and I'm like, well, of course he would say that. That's at least offensive. And that's partly because he knows where he comes from. He knows he's Nigerian. He's like first generation American. It's like, okay, like, of course you would say that. And let me commend him for having the conversation, and just know for people that really want to know, like, how do you approach this? You can walk up to, you can be at a restaurant, walk up to a table with 4 black Americans at that table eating lunch, and you can ask each of them, well, how do you address them? And they could each have a different answer, or have one of the 2 answers and different reasons why. So I would say, as I've said repeatedly, curiosity, love, openness, respect is what wins the day to that person. And the other thing I'll say on top of all of that is let go of the attachment for being right about what it is you're saying, because this is a conversation. I don't think it's not about simple right and wrong, or the right and wrong that's attached to this conversation is attached to the love, respect, openness, and curiosity. It's not attached to the term, as long as you're not being explicitly derogatory. So I hope that's helpful to people. Like I said, I had 3 of my white friends ask me in 1 week out of the blue, like, what to say. Let go of people of color. I wouldn't use that directly with black Americans. I would only use that at the corporate PC thing. I don't have anything against it. It's just way too diluted. Black does describe how somebody looks. It doesn't describe anything about where they're from. And black Americans, many do not know what their country of origin is. They just don't know. They're not able to stand in a room and say, I'm Ghanaian, or I'm Nigerian, or I'm from the Congo. And even you have people that are from Haiti and on the islands that still have a very strong culture that's attached to that ancestry, even though they're not in Africa, right? So you will see Haitian Americans here, and they know they're Haitian, right? Or somebody from the islands. Yet when you're talking to black Americans, the conversation isn't the same. And so, because that lineage is not available unless you've done a lot of research and gotten lucky in finding answers, and many haven't. And so, for white people that are looking to enter in that conversation, I would say, I don't know how many times it's been, but curiosity, love, openness, and respect. Let go of saying the right thing. If you want to know, just ask. And if you just want to say something, both of the terms I've heard, both black and African American, used, I don't think either of them are overly offensive, yet if somebody corrects you, just accept the correction and move on. And in this day and age, if somebody corrects you and they have energy on it, then I wouldn't be offended by them having energy on it. Yet we all have to get through this thing together. And so, love, openness, respect, curiosity. Don't be attached to being right. Just don't be derogatory or offensive. If somebody wants to correct you, take the correction. Just call them what they say. And that's it. It's very simple. Um, and that's what I got for today. Love you guys. Oh, like and subscribe to the channel also. It really helps me out. Should have said that at the beginning. But like and subscribe. Talk to you soon.